All right, so everybody that's listening, if you're listening to us on one of the 25 radio stations, we greatly appreciate that. Keep listening. If you're listening to us on one of the podcast platforms, excuse me, Rumble, Spotify, YouTube, the list goes on and on. We thank you for listening to that as well. We have a very special guest, a man that used to represent me in Congress, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, GOP chair for Dallas County, is the executive director for the American Constitutional Rights Union. And as I said, former congressman, former Texas GOP chair. You can find more about Alan West at alanwest.substack.com. I know that was a mouthful, but thanks so much, Congressman. Should I call you Congressman or Lieutenant Colonel? I feel like
Alan's fine. Alan's fine.
Well,
But
I
yeah,
feel like Congressman is a step down
yeah,
because Lieutenant
Colonel's a
Colonel
lot
is the
better.
top of the heap.
Well,
And
it's up there, so I prefer that. I don't want to be addressed by a reference or a title that I would have to share with AOC or Rashida Tlaib or some of those folks.
well, listen, I was all in that game, and we were talking before we started
Yeah.
recording. When I was at Lynn University, I was very far to the left, the Bernie Sanders guy. I voted for Bernie Sanders in 2020. I voted for Joe Biden in 2020. I voted, unfortunately, and I apologize for saying this, against you in 2010 because I was very far to the left in all these political conversations. Voted for Barack Obama. The list goes on and on. Throughout COVID-19, we've saw the takeaway of freedoms, whether it's been freedom of speech. We now see freedom of religion getting destructed with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Obviously, what's happened with the medical issue that happened in 2020, 2021, and 2022, where men in the military, such as yourself, were forced to get vaccines that, we're seeing a lot of side effects right now. I personally, Alan, are affected by a side effect due to that vaccine. And that really changed my mind of how I'm thinking about politics, and that this whole Green New Deal was a sham. All this woke stuff, everybody's a racist, everybody's anti-Semitic, this and that is a joke. So what I want to ask you, Alan, is what happened to our country? Because I'm 30 years old. When I was growing up in the 90s, it seemed like happy days were ahead, and even 9/11. Well, we all had the flag on the car. We all saluted to the national anthem. We all stood up for the national anthem, stood up for the Pledge of Allegiance. And now this country is hated by people inside of it. So what happened?
Well, it's very interesting you talk about that. I'm 63, and I just want to give you a case in point. I just got back from being in Normandy for the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and I actually got a chance to jump in on 2 drop zones there. And what you saw there in Normandy, in France, and all of those villages and all of those towns, you saw the old people, you saw the middle-aged people, you saw the young people, you saw the children, everybody, men and women. They were out there in American military uniforms. They were waving flags. I mean, they were driving old Jeeps and trucks and half tracks and everything. Because what had happened over the 80 years since those American men landed on the beaches of Omaha and Utah and climbed and scaled the cliffs of Pointe du Hoc and dropped in those drop zones, every generation continued to tell the story about what happened and how they were liberated from tyranny and from evil. But I think what has happened, Rob, in the United States of America is we don't tell those stories anymore. We don't talk about those things in our houses. And we have abdicated a lot of that responsibility as parents over to teachers. And teachers are therefore not teaching our kids, but they're indoctrinating our kids, and they're passing along an ideological agenda. If I had ever come home and I told my dad that I did not want to be Alan, that I wanted to be Aline, it would be a very interesting conversation. But the thing also would be, my dad would say, who put that idea and that thought into your head? And so I think that we have got to get more parents and grandparents doing, as it says in the Bible, in the book of Joshua 24:15, choose for yourselves whom you shall serve, the gods of the Amorites or the gods from across the river. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. We've got to start having these conversations about freedom, about liberty in our homes. We have got to, the Independence Day is coming up. One of the things I always challenge people to do, Sit down and read the entire Declaration of Independence to your family. Most people don't know the entire Declaration of Independence. They don't understand it. They don't understand that it really established a unique relationship between the individual citizen and the institution of government. The individual citizen is sovereign. They're supreme. There is no other country in the world that says that you're inalienable rights of life, liberty, and property, which is natural rights theory of John Locke, which I'm sure you're quite familiar with. That makes you, supreme and sovereign over the institution of government. And Thomas Jefferson quoted John Locke when he talked about the laws of nature and nature's God. He talked about all of those complaints and usurpations and infringement of individual rights and freedoms. It was really a list of grievances. The Declaration of Independence was, and says, this is why we have to do this. But when you look at what you just talked about, a government that tells you as a healthy person, you can't go outside your house, a government that tells you that you have to shut down your business. You haven't done anything wrong. I haven't seen in any constitution or any document where the federal government has that right. A government that tells you that if you don't get this certain shot, you can lose your job. I mean, all of these infringements, a government that violates the very first liberty that we have in our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, the freedom of religion and the free exercise thereof, saying that churches have to shut down. Why not Walmart? Why not McDonald's? When you talk about we will, as the government, determine what is essential, it was Benjamin Franklin that said those who will surrender essential liberty for temporary security in the end will deserve neither liberty nor security. So I think that we've got to get back and have these fundamental conversations once again in our homes. And I think that that is something where you can connect with young people, because me being 63, my oldest daughter is 31, my youngest daughter is 27. What do you always hear from young people? Leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. Don't tell me what to do, blah, blah, blah. Well, all of a sudden you have this centralized government that is telling you what to do. They're telling you what to eat. They're telling you what to drive. They're telling you what type of appliance you can have in your home, what temperature you can set on your heating and air conditioning. And so I think the young people are seeing this like yourself, and you're saying, this is not what I thought liberalism was all about, because true classical liberalism is about individual liberty.
But can we bring this back to the colleges? Because I think that obviously earlier on in the education, we see this in Florida with our great Governor Ron DeSantis, who's put in some great rules, great laws, I should say, to make sure that these teachers that are in elementary school, middle school, and high school are not inflicting their own agendas on these young kids, that are very much that they could brainwash these kids. But the brainwashing, I feel, really starts in the colleges, where you got these 18-year-old boys and girls. They're going into college. This is the first freedom they're going to have in their lives. And they're brainwashed, as I was. Listen, I told you, when you were running against Ron Klein back in 2010, they had posters of you that were shown to me, of the pamphlets or whatever the heck we want to call them, that you were this racist. I don't know how you could be racist, but whatever it may be. and all these Habuki theater words about that, you do this, you were for that. Obamacare obviously was the big issue of the time at that point in time. And I was told, and I'm only 18, 19 years old at that time. So, I'm very impressionable. So they're pushing this agenda, and I didn't know who the hell you were. I didn't even know you served the dang country, for that matter. But that's the ideology that's being pushed in the colleges, is you can save the world. And that's what I was told personally, that you can be whoever you want to be, boy, girl, he, him, this, that, and all this other silliness. And I think that's where the problem is. And, that's where we need to kind of figure out a way. And I don't know what the way is, maybe you do, of how to get more control over what's being taught by these colleges. And I know tenure is a big deal. I don't know if that's the answer. Maybe you have a better answer, and then we'll move on.
Well, I think one of the things you have to look at is, I'm sure you're familiar with Hillsdale College. That type of model should be in every state, and we should, look to see how we can get that established. But the left in America really doesn't believe in the three branches of government. They believe in the three branches of rule. And what are the three branches of rule? It's the media, it's the courts, and it's academia. And so where we see ourselves, this has been a long, slow march, to use the words of Chairman Mao, to get more leftism, Marxism, socialism, progressivism, whatever they want to label it, into our college and university campuses. And let me give you a great example. You know, on October the 7th of last year, young people were at a concert in Israel. Young people. Hamas comes in and absolutely brutalizes them, guns them down. Young girls are raped. They are, you know, mutilated and then killed. But now we have young people here in the United States of America, the same age as some of those people, that are saying, you know, long live the Intifada. This is all great. How do we get to that point? Because you have professors that are saying these things. And if you really understand history, there's no such thing as a Palestinian people. When folks are saying, you know, Gaza needs to be free and they've been occupied, Israel gave over Gaza back in 2006. And you talk about genocide. Well, Hamas has in its charter, you know, the genocide, elimination, eradication of the Jewish people. And so here it was last week. I am there in Normandy, you know, visiting the sites where our men hit the beaches to liberate a continent from Adolf Hitler. But now we have young people in New York City this past week saying that Hitler should have been allowed to finish the job. So yes, we have to get on these college and university campuses. And one of the things that I like, as a matter of fact, next week I'll be going out to the Reagan Ranch Center in Santa Barbara, California, to speak with the Young America's Foundation Youth Summer Conference. So we have got to get more, you know, conservative thought and more speakers on these college and university campuses, so that there is another voice. And let me tell you, when you do that, the other side goes apoplectic. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, throwing fits. The most recent thing, I was up at the what I forget the university, but St. Louis University. Yeah, and they actually drew a swastika on my lapel pin. Now, think about how disingenuous and offensive that is. My dad served in World War II. And as you just said, you know, here you were a young leftist student. You didn't even know I served 22 years in the military. They obviously didn't know that I had a father who served in World War II. So I think it's a lack of knowledge that a lot of these professors prey upon. And you have these young, impressionable minds that all of a sudden they don't want to get an F. They don't want to challenge this professor. They see him as an authority figure. But we need to have these authority figures held accountable, especially when we have taxpayers paying the salary for these individuals. Our students need to be taught. They need to be taught in understanding how to have good intellectual debate and not have this fascist, you know, perspective of, if I don't like what you're saying, I'm just going to shut you down. I mean, think about this. People are going out and saying death to America. The Intifada should come back, but nothing is happening to them. But yet, if you go out and misgender a person, Rob, now in some places you're guilty of a crime because you see a guy and you say, "Hey, guy," and they say, "You have offended me. You hurt my feelings," and they press charges against you. This is how upside down we've become.
AlanWest.substack.com. Alan, I want to talk about this because it's going on in the military now, where we're seeing all this transgenderism. And we worry about the recruitment process in the military. And I want to tap on that because it's kind of hitting what we just spoke about with the wokeness in our society. So the military is obviously facing these recruiting issues. You know, some of it is because of the obesity and the unhealthy of America in general, the food we're putting in our body, the pollutants in the air. The list goes on. And there's obviously people that are upset with the endless wars, the military-industrial complex. But there's also this push in the military about, as I just stated, the transgenderism. I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong with this, this started under Bill Clinton, and now it's really gone out of control now. So what is going on with the military recruitment and now letting in all these illegal immigrants, which Dick Durbin, Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois, kind of said the quiet part out loud on Capitol Hill when he said, we need these illegals in the country so they can basically, you know, he didn't say in these exact words, but we need them to join the military. And that's how Rome fell when they started this. So this is very scary for our country. I'm sure you, as a person that served this country honorably, has a problem with this.
I absolutely do. I mean, one of the things that you just mentioned was When Romans stopped serving in the legions and they outsourced that to all of the different territories they had taken over, there was no allegiance to Rome. And so how could you as a sitting United States senator say that we want people who their very action in being in the United States of America was to violate our rule of law, to join the military and then stand up supposedly and raise their right hand and say they're going to support and defend the Constitution when their existence shows that they're not going to support and defend the Constitution. This is how upside down it's gotten. And you're right, when young men and young women, and we still do have young men and women join the military. As a matter of fact, my youngest son-in-law will get commissioned in a couple of months, direct commission as a chaplain in the United States Army. But the thing is that when they sit back and look and see that we're not training, they're being told that the most important thing is to have gender, conformity training. They have to have equity training. They have to have diversity training. All of these things that there is no standard. It's all about inclusiveness. That you're being told, hey, Rob, you're a white guy. You are a permanent oppressor. Alan, you're a black guy. You're always going to be oppressed by Rob. How are you going to build a cohesive fighting force if you're telling Rob that you're always going to be bad, and you're telling Alan you're always going to be a victim of Rob? I mean, that just doesn't happen. So until we get a new commander-in-chief, until we get generals that go back to understanding that they're supposed to be providing a strong fighting force, because the world sees weakness. And that's why you see Xi Jinping, Putin, Iran, North Korea, the Islamic jihadists now. Remember, we just caught 8 Tajikistan terrorists illegally in the country in New York, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles. And then you have the cartels, which, me living out here in Texas, I get to see some of their activities quite a bit. I've been down to war about 15, 16 times. So we've got to get back to what Ronald Reagan talked about, peace through strength. And we've got to get back to a military that understands that their role and responsibility is to fight and win. When was the last time you saw America fight and win? That is the problem. We continue with these half measures, and we leave the enemy on the battlefield instead of imposing our will against them. So if we get a new commander-in-chief, we start to clean out some of these perfumed princes, as we call some of these generals that we have, I think you'll see the recruit numbers go back up.
So you kind of just teed off into the next question about the border and how it's wide open, and how this happened before. Back in 2000, we saw that these guys were coming in. They were setting up shop in California, somewhere in Boca Raton, Florida, doing fight schools, getting ready for September 11, 2001. Are you worried about this? I mean, you just talked about these terrorists coming right over the border, and there are a lot of young men coming over the border.
Yes.
Fighting age men, not older men, not family men. Yeah. They're just coming over, single men, and it's a problem. And I'm very nervous about this, but you're right there in Texas, so you see it firsthand, as you say.
Single military age males, you have hundreds of thousands of them that we know about. And you have more single military age males that have come into this country legally over the past 3.5 years than you have an active duty army. You have more gotaways, people that we don't know where they are, 1.5 to 2 million, than you have in the entire active duty military right now. And part of that number is anywhere from 30 to 40,000 Chinese single military age males that are here in this country. And we know that China is the one that is feeding fentanyl to the cartels. It's refined and manufactured there and brought across. Hundreds of thousands of Americans lost their lives. And when you talk about Muhammad Atta, that was down in Plantation, Florida, where I lived. He bought his tickets, those airline tickets, in Lauderdale by the Sea. So yes, we have come full circle. Even the FBI director, Christopher Wray, has said that we're at the most heightened state of terrorism alert that we've seen since right before 9/11. What Joe Biden is doing with the border is unconstitutional. It's treason. It's a high crime and misdemeanor. And I don't understand why no one is going after him and saying, you got to step down. He has to be impeached because you're putting the lives of Americans at risk. Think about the young nursing student at the University of Georgia, Laken Riley. The person that killed her came across the border illegally right here in Texas. Now, how did he end up in New York, where he was arrested but released? And how did he go, down into Georgia? So we've got to be very concerned. Now, the other thing, Rob, is that at the same time we're allowing all of these illegals, single military age males coming to this country, we continue to hear people talk about we need to have more gun control. Legal law-abiding citizens cannot protect themselves. And on top of that, we need to defund the police. Here in the city of Dallas, which is #2 in the country for sex trafficking, we're short about 1,000 to 1,100 police. And guess what has happened? The crime rate has just absolutely taken off. Austin, Texas, the capital of Texas, which resembles San Francisco now, they've defunded the police. Now they're in the top 15 for murders in Austin, Texas. But yet the left is telling us we should not have guns while they're letting single military-aged males into the country. This is a recipe for disaster.
Is this why we're seeing a lot of African Americans and also Hispanics vote Republican now, support Donald Trump and Republicans, because they are just fed up with this defund the police BS?
Yeah, absolutely right. Because the two demographics that are most adversely affected by all of this releasing of prisoners and criminals back onto the streets. I mean, there's no cash bail and everything of the Black and Hispanic communities. It's not so much the people there in Boca Raton, although what can end up happening in Boca Raton is these individuals will come out there and they will hijack or carjack you or things of this nature. So you still have to be very suspect of your surroundings, but it definitely affects those people in the Black and Hispanic communities. And as well, when you're allowing all of these Venezuelan gangs, Honduran gangs, all these other gangs into these communities, they're holding people hostage.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Again, Alan Westopp, Substack.com. I want to kick this around, just staying on the military aspect of the interview. We have seen that Russia is sending their warships to Cuba. Very scary. It looks like almost a World War III scenario. What is the message that Russia is sending? Is it that, they are strong? We can keep funding Ukraine and keep having them battle Ukraine, but they are still strong and they are mighty.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so Russia is there reminding us of the Cuban Missile Crisis. They're there with Cuba, and they're going to conduct joint naval exercises with Venezuela. And think about this, Rob. All of the energy resources that we have here in the United States of America, the Biden with the Green New Deal agenda that you talked about, he put a kibosh on that. And so who do we go to ask to buy oil from? Venezuela. And Venezuela, who is, has ties with Iran, ties with Russia, supported by China. Now, all of a sudden, they're doing joint naval exercises 90 miles away from the coastline of Florida. And so what this shows is that America is weak, and everyone sees this, and everyone understands this. When you have China doing all of these military exercises around Taiwan, and what it shows is America is weak. And I think that the young people need to understand is that right now, we had one of the most venerable surface war fleets back during the Reagan administration. Now China has a stronger and bigger surface naval warship fleet than the United States of America. And the means by which you extend a nation's power is, I hate to say this, but it's not through an army, it's through a navy. I mean, the Spartans were fierce warriors, but the Athenians had the ships. So, I mean, they were the ones that were kind of more able to, command Greece because they could command the seas. And so what Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping are showing is that, we can still get out here and do things while the United States of America and Joe Biden, they're trying to figure out which way is up. And let's not even mention, the vice president who, I don't know, man. You help me out here.
Listen. I'm ashamed I voted for those people. Like I said, I was brainwashed. I was in the liberal hysteria at that time. I've woken up due to what I've seen throughout COVID with the constitutional rights just being stomped on. I mean, we saw this after 9/11 where some constitutional rights were being stomped on, but they really finished the job through 2020 and beyond now. And, as we talked about earlier on, and with the so-called vaccine, the liberals say my body, my choice for abortion. But when it comes to the vaccine, it's a totally different ball game. It is not my body, my choice. It's you inject this or you don't work or you get outcasted from the rest of society where people make fun of you left and right, that you lose friends. It becomes a political issue. It's really disgusting. So as the leader of the American Constitutional Rights Union, what can we do to fight against big daddy government that is really crushing our constitutional rights? And the Biden administration is just, they keep pushing forward. And
Well,
soon we're not going to have any rights left.
yeah, well, first and foremost, people need to be better informed about what their constitutional rights are.
Right.
And I think that that's one of the things we have to do, and that's one of the things we try to do at the ACRU is better inform and educate people and get out in the country and talk about these issues. But we've got to have leadership that says no. One of the things you have to understand is that when the federal government, and this is part of the supremacy clause, because that's something that everyone always invokes, the federal government is supreme over the states as long as they, three words, in pursuance thereof of the rule of law, the Constitution. The federal government is doing things that are not pursuant thereof to the Constitution. What they are talking about can be nullified. You don't have to do it. When, edicts, orders, mandates, and decrees are coming down, you can just nullify it. So the people have to understand, especially the states, that's why gubernatorial races are so important, that there is power in our states. If you go back to the Declaration of Independence, you will see that free and independent states created the federal government, the United States of America. And so we have got to understand that sense of federalism. And also remember the 10th Amendment that says all those powers now specifically delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states and to the people. So again, if we respond, and it's quite Pavlovian, if someone says, you got to shut down your business, and we say, show me where you have that enumerated power to do so, that's what we have to start doing. And just, instead of being the mindless lemmings and saying, yeah, you have to stay in your house. If you go out and you try to surf out there on the Atlantic Ocean or go out and paddleboard and there's no one around you, but I'm going to arrest you because you're out of your house, that's crazy. And so we saw all of those things happen. So I think it's very important that people understand their constitutional rights, freedoms, and liberties. They understand what's going on with their Bill of Rights. I mean, this trial that they just had in New York, I mean, it violated so many of Donald Trump's, Bill of Rights, constitutional rights. It's just unfathomable. But this is where we come to in the United States of America.
Well, that's the problem. The liberals are chanting for all this, but again, the chickens could come home to roost.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just cheering it on. They really don't care. I want to go into Dallas County. Obviously, they're the chair of the GOP there. But just to I just want to get this out there for people listening. This is not just the liberals doing this. There was Republican governors that locked down their states too.
Absolutely.
Just to set the record straight.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. That's one of the things that when I was the state party chairman, I kind of butted heads with Governor Greg Abbott, because the Texas State Constitution says that in an emergency declaration, after 30 days, the governor cannot unilaterally take any actions. He has to go to the legislative branch if he wants to take any further actions. Well, Greg Abbott just continued to keep us in this extended emergency declaration for almost 2 years. And you have businesses that were shut down in Texas. And when you tell people that, they're like, Texas? I say, absolutely right. As a matter of fact, we had a hair salon owner by the name of Shelley Luther who was placed in jail because she said, I'm not shutting down my salon. Well, guess what? I mean, revenge is the greatest success.
Right.
Now she's a member of the Texas State House. She just got won her primary. That's a very red district, so she will be elected there. So again, I think it's time for us, Republican or Democrat, you've got to understand what's the right and proper relationship between the individual and the institution of governance. Progressive does not mean Democrat. Progressive does not mean left. Progressive just means that you believe that government is superior and sovereign and supreme over the individual. And you're right, you've seen Republicans do that. And so I think that what we have to start looking for constitutional conservatives, people that understand John Locke. And one of the things that I would tell to the young people out there, and it's paratrooper proof, even a dummy like me can understand it, and it's only 55, 57 pages long. Read Frederick Bastiat, The Law, because you've got to understand what the purpose of the law, what the purpose of the government is, and that is to protect your life, your liberty, your property. And when the government is not protecting your life, your liberty, your property, it's not constitutional. Is unauthorized, it's illegal. And the people have to stand up against that. So, there's so many things that we have to do as a people to realize that we've got to get ourselves back in balance. The system of federalism, as we just talked about, realizing how the states play in this thing and not just having all of these unfunded mandates and liabilities pushed down upon the states, and they have to believe that they have to abide by it. No, they have to start nullifying some of these wrong things that come down.
Well, they're not teaching the founding documents in the schools
No,
anymore. They're
no.
teaching critical race theory. They're
Mhm.
pushing all this stuff. We went through this throughout the conversation, all the woke agenda stuff, instead of learning, the documents that founded this country and the rights of the people, the
Those
Bill of
were
Rights.
old white men. They owned slaves. Who cares? They're irrelevant. America wasn't founded in 1776. It was founded in 1619 when slave. This is the insidious crap that's being poured into the minds of our kids, and it's horrible. I mean, and if you don't like it, if you're a parent and you show up at a school board meeting and say, "I don't like what you're doing to my kid," all of a sudden you're a domestic terrorist. And so, but the real terrorists that are coming across the border illegally, we don't do anything about that. So this is why it's so important that people get engaged in this election cycle. You always hear, Rob, this is the most important election in our lifetime. This one really is. There are two different philosophies of governance, and you've seen it. I mean, you've been on one side, now you come over to the other side. So you know exactly what you talk about. David Horowitz. I mean, people that have been strong, hard leftists, they know what could happen to this country. And look at the recent elections in Europe, where all of a sudden you have conservatives that are starting to sweep in France and Germany, and I forget the other country, but and you got the elections coming up in England. So I think that there is a huge tide, a sea change. And when I see a young person like you that, probably thought Alan West is a weird, funny guy. He's the black face of white supremacy, blah, blah, blah. He's a Nazi. And now all of a sudden, you and I are sitting here having a conversation about constitutional rights and freedoms. That shows me that it works. When we expose people to truth, when people start to realize, I don't like my rights being infringed upon. I don't like being told. I don't like being ruled. I would like to be governed. I think that you will see a difference in this country.
Well, as I stated, and then we'll move on to the last three questions. What happened with me again, 2020 and beyond, we've saw the crumble of big daddy government and what they can do to you to enforce injections on people. Obviously, that's my issue because it did injure me.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people in Texas. I've heard about what's going on what went on at the GOP convention, what went on in the GOP primaries, that a lot of people were unseated, Republicans in the state house and the state Senate,
Yes.
because they were pushing all these mandates. They were in bed with big pharma. And, we've introduced people on this show, Texans for Vaccines Choice,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Peter McCullough, who's
Mm-hmm.
a big doctor over in Texas, Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, who is fighting with the Texas Medical
Yeah.
Board over in Houston. We've had all these people on the program, and they're talking about what's going on in Texas and how they and many others are fighting for medical freedom, for freedom of choice, freedom of religion, freedom of speech. And I want to get into that because you guys are seeing a lot of people moving into Texas,
Yes.
especially during COVID. A lot of people from California moving in. They're trying to push their liberal agenda on people like you that are native Texans now. And obviously, you're running the Dallas GOP. Dallas County has been, pretty much blue right now. You've even seen congressional races that used to be red seats go to blue now as far as Democrats. What is going on in Texas where we're seeing this trend of a very red state go very much toward the
Yeah.
left?
Well, this has been the mantra of the left to come in and take over major urban population centers in red states, and next thing you know, you flip it. What has happened in Texas, there are two types of people that are coming here from California, Illinois, New York, failed, blue states. There are the people that say, I'm done, I can't deal with it, I'm going to Texas, there's no personal income tax, and I think there's more liberty and freedom there. But then there are the people that are picking up and moving their corporation and picking up and moving their business to Texas, and then bringing along these employees that they kind of liked it where they were. And so all of a sudden they come here and it's like, I don't like all this, conservative stuff. I mean, I want something different. I want to have a lot of this DEI and all these type of things in the schools. And so all of a sudden the capital of Texas also looks like San Francisco. Dallas, from 2006 to now, has become a D+18 county. It's not deep blue, but when you tell people that, like, Dallas is D+18, yeah. We have no elected Republicans in countywide positions in Dallas County. And folks just find that unbelievable. Or you go down to Houston and Harris County, which is the cradle of the oil and gas industry. And you find out it's run by a 29-year-old leftist nutcase by the name of Lena Hidalgo. And folks, how did you get to this point? Well, because so many people in Texas kind of got a little complacent. And they kind of said, well, Texas is Texas, it's strong, it's red. And slowly but surely, we have this saying over in the Middle East, you never allow the camel to get his nose under the tent because the rest of the body will follow. Well, we allowed leftism to get his nose under the tent here in Texas. And now the body is coming in. We got to kind of push that camel back outside the tent.
Yeah, and you have to, because it's really getting out of control. Do you feel like Dallas County reminds you a little bit of Palm Beach County now, where you used to represent?
Yeah.
As far as it becoming very blue, although Palm Beach County is becoming red now due to Governor DeSantis in 2022. He made that a red county, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it is, because I think that people, saw the policies and said, we don't want to be shut down. We want to be open. And Governor DeSantis took a lot of flack for that. But hey, look at what the end result was. You still have some issues down in Palm Beach County, and I got a lot of friends there, where local elections, and municipal elections, some of your school board elections, my little grandson just came in. We've got to do better at those local elections. That's one of the things I want to be pushing as the chairman here, is that we have to fight local in order to win national. So I would like to see us be able to get more young people to run for judicial positions, run for city council positions, all of those things, because, and especially school board. I mean, you got a lot of young people that, just finished school. Let them come in there. And so I don't think we need the 60 and 70-year-olds sitting on school boards. Let's get some young people that understand what is happening. So that's one of the things that I want to do. And again, we got to engage those minority communities that are the most adversely affected by bad policies that are, being pushed down upon them. But you're correct. When you look at Miami-Dade County, you look at what happened in Palm Beach County, folks are waking up and they're starting to realize it. Ron DeSantis, in his first election as governor, the issue that helped him win was educational freedom. Single Black mothers came across and voted for Ron DeSantis instead of Andrew Gillum, the Black mayor of Tallahassee, because he said, I want to make sure your kid has equal opportunity in education. And that meant the difference. And so I think those are the type of things we have to start doing all throughout. And Rob, I don't want to say, well, we got to say one thing to Black people, say one thing to Hispanic people. So let's say the same thing to everybody. Right. Because everybody wants to wake up. I think everybody wants to be a victim. People don't wake up every day saying, I want to be a victim. But yet, if they only hear the message of being a victim, then that's what they'll lean toward.
Last question. A lot of young people listening into this show in general, or viewing it, or whatever they are listening or viewing, they're very worried about the direction of our country, whether it's inflation in grocery prices, housing prices, rent, the list goes on and on. What would you tell the people viewing this or listening to this about, how they can get through this crisis? Because God forbid we have another 4 years of Joe Biden. That's very scary for them.
Well, when Benjamin Franklin came out of the signing of the Constitution, 17 September 1787, a woman, a Philadelphia socialite, Mrs. Powell, met him and asked him that very important question I think resonates to today. Angela, please. It resonates to today. Well, doctor, what is it that we have, a republic or a monarchy? And he said, a republic if you can keep it. So I think it's so important that we understand what it means to live in a constitutional republic. And each and every one of us, we have a duty and responsibility to keep it. So I would say to young people, get engaged, get involved, do your research, listen to Rob, okay? Rob is a picture perfect example of someone that said, hey, I'm on this side and everything seems right. Then all of a sudden he says, it doesn't seem right. And so, Rob, you were courageous in making that decision. I'm sure you lost a lot of friends and folks that, were your Pizos and simpatico with you. But sometimes you have to look and say, I got to think and do what is right. And, these friends who want me to give up my freedoms. I don't want to be a part of that. So I think that young people are going to be the critical linchpin to this. And again, last week I'm in Normandy, France, where young people lied about their age to go and fight against evil, fight against tyranny. So I think that the next great generation, I might be talking to one of them right now.
Well, God bless you, Alan West. And I'm so grateful to have you on the program again, alanwest.substack.com. And I apologize again for not voting for a great man like you, but we are grateful that you were in Congress. And obviously, you're doing big and beautiful things over in the state of Texas. And we hope to have you on again sometime soon. Again, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, thanks so much.
God bless you. Steadfast and loyal, my friend.